Okay, so today we're going to deconstruct a systematic review that really challenges how we all think about cybersecurity. The big takeaway? It argues that our biggest vulnerabilities, well, they aren't in our code. They're in us, our people, our organizations, and the world they operate in.
It's a huge paradox, isn't it? We're pouring billions and billions of dollars into better firewalls, stronger encryption. The tech has never been better. And yet, major breaches are still all over the headlines. So what gives? Well, this paper really digs into that question, and it uncovers some pretty critical gaps that our tech-only mindset just keeps missing.
And this right here really nails the core problem the paper points out. Look at the mismatch. All our focus, all our energy is on the left column: technology, infrastructure, detection tools. But where do the threats actually come from? The right column: humans, organizations, and the wider environment. It's like we're building a fortress with giant walls, but leaving all the doors wide open.
All right, so here's our game plan. First, we'll talk about that big cybersecurity blind spot. Then we'll get into the three missing pieces of the puzzle: the human, organizational, and environmental factors. After that, we'll see how they all connect in a kind of chain reaction, look at the long-term ripple effects, and wrap up with what this means for future research.
Okay, Section 1, the cybersecurity blind spot. This is all about why looking only at tech is, well, dangerously narrow. You know, even the big-name frameworks we all rely on, like from NIST and ISO/ISC, they're super heavy on the tech side. And look, that stuff is essential, don't get me wrong, but this paper argues that they tend to treat the human side of things as kind of an afterthought. And that's a huge problem.
And this quote from the abstract pretty much says it all. The authors are basically pointing out that our obsession with tech solutions is the very thing making it so hard to build a defense that actually works. We're getting in our own way. This is the central problem they're trying to unpack for us.
So if tech isn't the whole story, then what are we missing? This is where we get to the core of the paper, and honestly, where it's most valuable. It systematically breaks down the research on three huge domains we tend to overlook: the human, the organizational, and the environmental.
First up, let's talk about the human factor. Us. For better or for worse, we are always the first line of defense. Any one of us can be the strongest link in the chain or the one single click that brings the whole house of cards down.
Now, this is so important. The paper points out that security mistakes often aren't about a lack of knowledge, it's a cognitive load problem. We're not being dumb, our brains are just fried. Think about it. When you're getting bombarded with security alerts all day long, you hit a point of mental fatigue. And that doesn't make you more careful, it actually makes you more likely to just click on that sketchy link to make the pop-ups go away. It's not just about what people know, it's about their motivation, their emotions, and just how much mental energy they have left.
Okay, so that's the individual. But people don't exist in a vacuum, right? So next, the paper zooms out to the organizational factor. This is all about the company's structure, its culture, its real priorities, basically the whole ecosystem that determines whether good security habits can actually take root and grow, or if they just wither on the vine.
And this is really where the rubber meets the road. Leadership can talk a big game about cybersecurity being a priority, but if they aren't actually putting money and people behind it, it's just empty words. But what's even more interesting is how culture plays into this. The paper finds that a CEO can announce a brilliant new security policy, but if the company culture sees security as just another annoying hoop to jump through, that policy is dead on arrival. It's the shared, unspoken rules, the culture, that really drives behavior, not just the official handbook.
And now we zoom out one last time, way beyond the company's front door. Because no organization operates on an island. There are all these powerful external environmental forces constantly shaping its security posture.
Yeah, these are the factors that set the rules of the game for everyone. We're talking about things like national data privacy laws that an organization has to follow or else. Or the political climate. If things are unstable, you might see a spike in state-sponsored attacks. It even includes things like industry groups where companies share threat data, which is kind of like creating a herd immunity against certain attacks. All of this is happening outside the company's control, but it has a massive impact.
Okay, so we've got the human, the organizational, and the environmental factors. But here's the real kicker, and maybe the biggest contribution of this research: these things don't exist in neat little boxes. They're all tangled up together, constantly interacting and influencing each other in this really complex chain reaction. Whoa, okay, I know this diagram looks like a bit of a spider web, but stick with me, because this is the conceptual heart of the entire paper. Especially for those of you in the audience who are building your own research models, this is absolute gold. So, the solid arrows are pretty straightforward. They show a direct link,
like more training leads to better preparedness. Simple. But the really juicy stuff is in the dashed arrows. Those show moderating effects. That's when one factor actually changes the strength of another relationship. And that's where things get really interesting.
So what does that actually mean? Well, let's take an example. You could have the most dynamic, security-focused leader in the world, but if they're dropped into an organization with a toxic culture that fights security at every turn, their positive impact is going to be way, way weaker. On the flip side, that same leader in a supportive culture, their impact is amplified. So the culture acts like a volume knob. It can turn the effect of leadership up or down. And if you're designing interventions, you absolutely have to understand these dynamics.
All right, so we get the factors, we get how they interact, but so what? What's really at stake here? Now let's talk about the consequences, this ripple effect that happens when things go right, or more often, when they go horribly wrong.
And this flowchart from the paper does a great job of showing that cascade of consequences. You can literally see how one initial event kicks off a chain reaction that unfolds over time, from the immediate aftermath to what happens weeks or months later, and then the long-term fallout.
Let's just walk through a classic example. So right away, in the immediate term, you've got a breach. Data is stolen, operations grind to a halt. Then, in the intermediate phase, the bills start coming due. We're talking massive legal fines, and your company's reputation is in the toilet. But it doesn't stop there. Long-term, investors lose confidence, your market position slips away to competitors, and even your own employees' morale is shot. It is a truly devastating domino effect.
So where does this leave us? Well, for all you grad students and up-and-coming researchers out there, this is the exciting part. The paper doesn't just look backwards, it lays out a whole new research agenda for the future by highlighting what we still don't know. This is basically your research mission, should you choose to accept it. First, someone needs to actually go out and empirically test all those complicated relationships in that framework. We need to see if they hold up in the real world. Second, what's the real ROI of investing in people versus tech? Is it better to spend $1 million on training or on a new firewall? We need hard data to answer that. And finally, we have to get away from these one-size-fits-all solutions and build models that actually adapt to a company's specific industry, its size, and its culture.
So I'll just leave you with this final thought. Now that we've seen this whole, messy, complicated picture, it's pretty clear that the biggest threat isn't always the flashy, obvious one. The weakest link in your digital fortress probably isn't your firewall. It might be your organization's culture. It might be the burnout your team is feeling. It could be something you haven't even thought of. So, what's the weakest link in your fortress?